Hello, good morning, everyone. This morning's reading will be from John, chapter 1, verse 1 to 18. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and the life was the light of man. And the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which lighteneth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh, and dwelled among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John bare witness of him, and cried, saying, This was he of whom I spake. He that cometh after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. And of his fullness have all we received, and grace for grace. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. No man has seen God at any time, the only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father. He hath declared him.
I caused quite a stir a couple of weeks ago, especially with Elton, who wanted to make sure that my statistics were correct. He came up to me and he said, You said 70% of young people who identified as Christian didn't identify as Christian 1 year after school. 70. I said, yeah, that's right. But then I started thinking, well, is that completely right? So I went and looked it up. And it's a little worse than 70%. If kids, young adults come out of high school, it's about 65%. You go off and you get a job someplace. The ones who go to university, it's about 75%. So the 70% is an average of how many of these young people just don't identify that way anymore. And so I'm standing there and I'm confronted with a situation where maybe I wanted to share my faith, or somebody notices a cross on my neck and says something to me, and they say something that is absolutely crushing. How do you deal with that? So today, the title of my talk today is Standing Firm in the Truth. Standing firm in the truth. I'll say this a couple of times. This is not a sermon. This is not giving you a bigger hammer so that you get somebody in front of you can just whack them with it. This is not the killer comment. Some of you being in sales, you have these, you have these techniques where you can sell somebody a car or sell somebody a house or whatever you need to sell them. It's not a killer technique. It's not a silver bullet. This sermon is more for you, and especially for young people. But all of us get knocked a little bit off our balance, and you get something in your face, you think, well, that kind of sounds right, and you're not really sure, and you can't, all those Bible verses that you memorized as a kid, they just don't come up in your head. And so, what do you do? And that's where I'd like to go this morning. I'll start with something quite disagreeable for this early in the morning, and that is postmodernism. And then I will move on to some quotes from people, famous people, that might knock you off balance. And we'll just look at them very briefly, and then we'll come back to them at the end of my sermon. We'll look at what our truth is, and we'll move on to defining truth, reasons why people aren't keen to get engaged with truth, and then I've got 7 common pushbacks about truth, and then I'll end with a story from Ravi Zacharias, an Indian story, and then we will end in prayer. Truth has been a problem. All you have to do is read the Gospels, and, Pontius Pilate is asking, what is truth? But today we have an especially pernicious attack on the truth called postmodernism. And postmodernism is a philosophical way of looking at the world. It's from a fellow by the name of Jacques Derrida and another one by the name of Foucault. I'm just spacing his first name right now. Both of them very brilliant. They talked about regimes of truth. What tends to be true is what the regime in power says is true. And so you can think of organizations that you may have worked in where, what we did was wrong, what we did was unethical, what we did wasn't the truth, but the powers that be just made it that way, and so it became the truth. And he focused on that. So postmodernism is a very intellectual and a highly abstract argument, and it's really difficult to untangle. Their primary assumption, are you ready for this? Their primary assumption is that there are an infinite number of interpretations of even a limited set of phenomena. I couldn't make that sentence easier. There's an infinite set of interpretations for even a limited set of phenomena. So, and it's technically true, unfortunately. I've done quite some research into artificial intelligence, and getting artificial intelligence programs to understand what a hand is simple. It's the thing at the end of a human's arm. Turns out it is wildly complicated. And sometimes even the best artificial intelligence programs will show, for example, if you want a hand, it'll show a hand with a dumbbell in it, like what you would find at a fitness center. And it doesn't distinguish between the hand grasping a dumbbell and just a hand. And you think, well, that's kind of dumb. Well, that's how it is. It's that complex. And that leads to the second assumption. So the first one is you can look at things in an infinite number of ways. And the second assumption, so it's very tempting then to say, well, since there are infinite possible interpretations, it is wrong to place one interpretation above all the others. And if you do that, you're doing it purely by virtue of some sort of power, some sort of, usually white men. This applies to mathematics. You might be surprised to hear. Mathematics? Yes, mathematics. There's a radical feminist, her name is Luce Irigaray. This is a very famous quote. You can find it everywhere. It's just absolutely hilarious. Luce Irigaray, she argued that E equals MC squared. Maybe you know this. You're paying attention in school. E equals MC squared. And M is mass and c is the speed of light. This is Einstein's famous equation. Yeah. She said E equals mc squared is a sext equation. Why? Because it privileges the speed of light over other speeds that are vitally necessary to us. These people are taken seriously, by the way. I didn't have to dig for this. And which therefore belongs to masculine physics. This is masculine physics. She thought that fluid mechanics, so for the engineers, sorry none of the engineers are here today, but that fluid mechanics was ignored in physics. It isn't, but she said it was. Fluid mechanics is systematically ignored in physics because masculine physics has difficulty coping with fluidity because that is a feminine attribute. It's wrong. It's just plain wrong. The mistake these people make is that there may be indeed almost infinite interpretations of different things, but there are vanishingly few viable interpretations. That's where it all falls down. And you say, well, Peter, what would be a viable interpretation? Oh, I don't know, not dying. I mean, if you can get through this world and not die before you're, 80 or something, you've been able, this is rather Darwinian look at it, but, if you can avoid being sick, if you can not die, if you can have, if you can live, if your kids can live, your family can live, your neighbors can live, your community, your city, your county, your province, your state, and your country, if they're all prospering, then that's probably a good interpretation of reality. But if the truth is whatever you want to make of it, then you might get statements like these. Truth, you just sit back and think, somebody's going to say this to you. I'll tell you who's going to say it. Einstein is going to say it to you. Einstein says to you, truth is what stands the test of experience. Well, that sounds pretty good. What would you say to that? Here's something. Believe nothing just because a so-called wise person said it. Believe nothing just because a belief is generally held. Believe nothing just because it is said in ancient books. Believe nothing just because it is said to be of divine origin. Believe nothing just because someone else believes it. Believe only what you yourself test and judge to be true. That was said by Buddha. So you are a first-year freshman at the University of Indiana, and somebody whacks you across the head with that, and you think, well, that sounds pretty profound. I guess that's right. Believe nothing just because it's said in ancient books. There's plenty of nonsense in ancient books. Oh, gosh, and you can start to really question where you are. And the last one, I believe that ignorance is the root of all evil, and that no one knows the truth. And that could be, and everyone else around you is shaking their head. Hey, yeah, that's right, yeah. And you think, well, gosh, I wanted to say something about Jesus, but I'm not going to do that now. How are we to think about these statements? Well, after confusing you with all of that postmodernism and quotes from Buddha, I want to bring us back down to truth, because truth is out there. There is truth. There is absolute truth, and I'll define that in just a moment. So I want to put a pretty high bar here. What is truth? Well, I'm going to tell you that truth is true for all people. This is not it's true for you and it's true for me. No, truth, if it's real, basic, fundamental truth, it's true for all people at all times, and it is true in all places. Now, I've set the bar very, very high there. Again, today is not to give you killer comebacks to people. The point of the sermon today is to allow you to stand firmly in your beliefs by respecting other people's positions, at least respecting them enough to ask a question. It will also help you see that other people, no matter how clever they seem, are not in the possession of truth. You are. As arrogant as that sounds today. Now, people have generally three reasons not to believe stuff. So there's the rational, there's the emotional, and there's the volitional. So the rational is, I just don't have enough evidence. I just haven't heard enough about this. And that's easy enough to knock on the head, but there are not many rational conversations out there happening about Jesus Christ today. Emotional, maybe they had a bad experience with religion. And volitional, people who don't want to bend the knee, they don't want it to be true. And so we have a volitional problem. I don't want it. Aldous Huxley, the author, he had a very nice quote, and he said, meaning or truth in life, I don't want it to be true. Because if it's true, then my lifestyle is sin. So these Christians who come out with this normative way of looking at ethics and meaning and truth, well, we've just said, there isn't any. And that allows us to pursue, in this quote, our own sexual desires and our own sins. There's a volitional problem there. And this is a great inconvenience. Because what if the truth lands you in prison? And it will. In about, 10 years. It will. It'll land you in prison. 10 years ago, the new Director General for Justice in the European Union was an Italian. He was being interviewed by the European Commission, and they asked him, as a practicing Catholic, whether or not he thought homosexuality was a sin. He said, as a Catholic, yes, I find it a sin, but it's permissible within the law of the European Union, and I would protect that. That was about the last sentence he said to them, and he was out. And it keeps going on. In the Netherlands right now, some of the preachers have been over here in the United States, and they're coming back, and they are talking about the evil of homosexuality, sex outside marriage, homosexual marriage, and these kinds of things. And they are labeled right along with the imams who teach hate and violence. They're called hate preachers. And we've got to get these people out. They want to even deport them. So what if the truth that you have, that you're obliged to share, will land you in prison? Or disqualify you from a job? What if you actually think that what you believe in God, about God, is subjective? We talked about this about three weeks ago, It's the way I was raised. Well, if you think it's subjective, you will never get past someone else's subjective belief. But if we believe that the gospel is objectively true, we're obliged to share it, aren't we? If somebody's got a terrible disease and we have, in Nigeria, I think they've now finally wiped out polio. It was difficult because a lot of people didn't want the injections. They finally wiped it out. But here we are coming saying, we, the UN, saying, we've got a solution to this. We've got a vaccination. Your children don't have to get polio. And there's a huge push to it because this is objectively true. There's almost no polio. And some of you are just old enough to remember people in iron lungs. Yeah? When polio was a real threat. So if we've got objective truth, let's look at some of the objections that there are to this truth. And this is from a guy by the name of Turek. You can find him. He's got an organization. If you go online, it's called Cross-Examined. The whole crossexamined.org. And he says, here are the things that we typically see. Here are the things that high school students, college students, and probably the rest of us typically see when we try to talk about truth. Or typically hear. Number one, there is no truth. And you're sitting there and you say, I've got something to tell you. And there is no truth. What do you do with that? There is no truth. You can't know truth. Or as Jack Nicholson said in what was the movie with Tom Cruise? What was it called? Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. There is no truth. You can't know the truth. This is very postmodern. You can't know it. It's infinite selection. All truth is relative. It's true for you, but it's not true for me. Nobody has the truth. Truth cannot be known. And the last one, there is no truth in religion, only science. Now you may have heard some of these before. What do you do with them? Now some of you in here, you've engaged with this stuff. You're ready. You are locked and loaded. And somebody comes up and says these things to you, and you're just like, bless your cotton socks. Let's talk about this. And this isn't a particular challenge, but it is a challenge to most of the rest of us. And I would like to show you that the way that you can hear, let's just take the first one. There is no truth. Write it up here on the board. There is no truth. There you are, University of Indiana. Somebody tells you there is no truth. And it's probably a professor. It's probably a professor of Old Testament studies, because it's almost all of these people are atheists that are teaching Bible, Old Testament, New Testament studies. You can't make this stuff up. There is no truth. What I'd like to show you is, instead of saying, well, there's truth because, we got this stuff and there's truth everywhere, and what do you do there? My suggestion is, don't start with yourself. Show that person the respect of what they've said. Respect what they've said. So what would you say? Well, each one of these statements has its weak point within the statement. So there is no truth. You can ask, is that true? There is no truth. Is that true? Yes. Yeah. Tell me about that. You don't have to just reach for your Bible immediately and swing. They want to say something. Okay, they want to engage with you. That's fine. There is no truth. Professor Gillis, yes. Is what you said just true? Well, there may be truth, but you can't know the truth. You can't know the truth. Professor standing up here, you can't know the truth. Derrida and Foucault proved to us in the 1960s that postmodernism and blah, 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 and you can't know the truth. But the conversational point, it sounds like I've just hit you on the head with a hammer. Bang! And you just have to sit there and write it down in your notes. Well, can't know the truth. But the conversational aspect is actually embedded in the statement itself. You can't know the truth, but you can? Does it just apply to me, or is it for you, Professor? You can't know the truth, but you can. I didn't say that. Well, you said you can't know the truth, which is a statement of truth. See me after class. The third one is, all truth is relative. All truth is relative. I think some of you, I see smiles out there. I think you're kind of getting this. All truth is relative. Well, the question that you can ask to show respect to someone who says all truth is relative is that a relative or an absolute truth? What? Well, what you just said. You said all truth is relative. That sounds like a statement of absolute truth. Ah. It's true for you, but it's not true for me. It's true for you. Well, that's where you were brought up, but it's not true for me. And the conversational aspect, again, is embedded in what they say. You can say, well, is what you say true for everybody? And get them thinking. You have the truth, but you don't need to hit them on the head with it. You have the truth. Just lean back and enjoy this. Atheists do not have the truth. There's a very good book out there called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. It takes more faith to be an atheist. You ask a room full of atheists, who believes in virgin birth? Oh, well, no hands. Okay. Who believes in Darwinian evolution? You can hear the hands go up. So that first little amoeba that was born was from a mother and father amoeba, or was it a virgin birth? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of virgin-y, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. So it's a really weak position. Professor Gillis stands up here and says, nobody has the truth. Nobody. That sounds about right. Nobody has the truth. And of course, it would be inconvenient if someone did have the truth, because then you might be held to that truth and you might not get to do the stuff that you want to do. So nobody has the truth. But it's in the discussion point here is within the statement itself. Nobody has the truth. What is the discussion point here? Except you. Well, I'm Professor Kant said, and Derrida said that, I'm just, Nobody has the truth, but you seem to have it. Tell me about that. The truth cannot be known. Can't be known. It's just out there. There's so many possibilities. It can't be known. So you can say, how do you know that? Because all of these are statements of truth. And the last one, there is no truth in religion, only science. And they think, wow, you'd just be knocked out of the park on that one. There's no truth in religion, only science. But again, the conversation here is within the statement itself. There's no truth in religion, only science. Is that a scientific statement? Well, it's what I believe. I've actually heard that answer. So there they are, 7 statements, 7 the typical statements that come out. And in each one of the statements, well, the discussion point, or let's call it the weak point, is actually built in. So let's put it to the test. I started out with 3 quotes. Let's see how well we do. The statement from Einstein, truth is what stands the test of experience. So if something is your experience, does that make it true? It's embedded in there. This is kind of rich from Einstein, who dealt with stuff he couldn't experience. The cosmological constant. I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that one. Yeah? Try to experience the speed of light. Yeah? Buddha. Believe nothing just because a wise person said it, or because it's generally held, or because it's in ancient books, or that's from divine origin. Believe nothing just because someone else believes it. Believe only in what you yourself test and judge to be true. But he's saying this as a statement of absolute truth. So you might say to Buddha, if you run into him, should we believe you? And the statement you just made. And so he says, well, what I mean is, don't just listen to anybody. And you think, well, that sounds like good advice. Would you like to hear why I choose to believe in the Bible? Because it is a reliable collection of historical documents written by eyewitnesses in the time of other eyewitnesses. They report supernatural events which were fulfillments of specific prophecies, and they claim that their writings are divine rather than human in origin. There's a lot of meat on that bone. And if the person across from you is really sincere, their attention is being called to the weakness of their point in a respectful way, and you've got an opening because you've memorized that little thing I gave you about why I believe in the Bible, and you are off to the races. And if they don't want to, if they say, you're a knucklehead, well, all right. Don't spend any more time with them. The last one. I believe that ignorance is the root of all evil. Where did she get the root of all evil? I wonder, did she just make that up, or does... I believe that ignorance is the root of all evil, and that no one knows the truth. You can feel it, right? No one knows the truth. Is that true? And if I am ignorant of the truth, am I evil? So without actually trying to do a yes it is, no it isn't, you can stand firmly in your faith by simply showing respect to what the other person has said, because the weakness in their argument is in their argument. And if you listen to it rather than do what I've done many times, I go into my head and I think, I've got to come up with a killer answer. I've got to load my pistol here and I've got to shoot just straight. Because at that point I'm all nervous and my gun's going like this and I shoot everything but the target. But if we can show respect to other people and realize that they do not have the truth, you have the truth. And showing respect to their argument will actually help you bring that truth to them. Then I think we, as older people and also as younger people, can stay truer to our faith than we might otherwise. That I'm trying to get to, but I'm just trying to help people see that the standard stuff that you get hit with is weak. It's just weak. It's a facade. It's a Potemkin village. It looks all big, but it's just a paper facade. God has made you, and you will be restless until you find rest in Him. If you are looking for popularity, if you're looking to fit in, if you are looking to be successful in the world's eyes or to satisfy a personal compulsion to please men, you have bought the lie that will never let you rest. By standing firmly in your faith, by being a workman for Christ, by giving others comments, the respect that they probably never expected them to receive, you can be a more bold and courageous in your faith and in your walk in God's will. You have the truth. It's right under your pillow.